Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney has expressed optimism that the U.S. President Donald Trump will respect Canada's sovereignty and be open to comprehensive trade negotiation despite ongoing tensions caused by Trump's trade policies. Carney emphasized that the U.S. will eventually realize the detrimental effects of Trump's trade war, particularly on the American economy. He highlighted that while Canada values its relationship with the U.S., it is prepared to stand firm in defending its interests. He added that the current trade conflict has already hurt key U.S. industries, and the pressure from American businesses and workers may push Trump towards seeking a resolution.
President Donald Trump claims that he totally changed you and your party's fortunes. Is he interfering in our election? And since he repeated the 51st state comment about Canada, does this mean that a meeting with Trump or a phone call is off the table?
From my perspective, they're not going to come until we get the respect we deserve as a sovereign nation. By the way, this is not a high bar. This is not a high bar to say we will sit down as a sovereign nation and have this negotiation, but also that we will have a comprehensive discussion, not a discussion about one-off tariffs, the latest initiative, but a comprehensive discussion of the economic relationship and the security relationship, which is also in the interests of the United States. Now, of course, in the end, America is going to lose from American trade actions, and that's one of the reasons why I'm confident that there will be that discussion with the appropriate amount of respect and the breadth, and I'm ready for it anytime.
Well, joining us to discuss Trump's moves on protection laws and Canada's Carney demands of respect before negotiations is Arise International Affairs analyst Dr. Marek Laskiewicz. Well, tell us, Marek, what is your take on Trump's handling of migrants, especially Cubans? We have Haitians, Venezuelans, and other migrants in general.
There's two aspects to this. The first one is he's drawn up a list of nations that he doesn't want to easily visit the USA, and these are nations which are on that top list. Secondly, it's one of his electoral promises. There's nothing new about that in that sense. Thirdly, the movement against migrants is kind of occurring everywhere. Great Britain, of course, is now thinking of sending people to the Balkans. Other areas such as Poland or countries in the EU are also unenthusiastic about migrants. The notion of deporting them en masse is certainly one step further. However, it has been started on a minor scale, for example, by Great Britain. So therefore, President Trump's actions will not actually fetch him as much international rebuke as might have been, say, had he done it a year or two ago. The sheer scale of it sort of reflects just how big America is, because obviously it has a much bigger country than, say, Great Britain or Germany or any other nation. And therefore, from this point of view, his policy will certainly produce some results in the sense that some migrants might leave. But as you pointed out in your program, it's unclear whether any of them have managed to secure a new status. And this is, of course, the question mark.
Economic critics say the deportations will affect the economy as those being deported contribute to the workforce in both private and public sectors. Is that true, and what's your take on this?
Yes, it is quite true that they do many of the jobs that other people in America would not do necessarily. And therefore, from this point of view, yes, there is a loss. However, this is politics, not economics. And it won't be the first country in the world, in world history, which has deported migrants, which in fact are helpful economically on the basis that politically they just don't want them. And that therefore, from this point of view, that argument, though it is sound, is unlikely to in any case change his views. Moreover, it is thought in Great Britain, and I think that's what Trump has in mind, that some of these jobs will eventually be filled by the American unemployed. So probably this will be linked with cutting welfare to, how can you put it euphemistically, encourage people back to work precisely those jobs which the migrants will no longer be able to fill.
A lot, I mean, is good to, this reminds me of what China, did a couple of years ago, try to, close some of the borders to ensure that they're able to take care of themselves. Is America ready for that? That's one question on one hand. Yeah, like you said, totally agreed, but how would they, move, especially with, some of the talk about China, talk about Canada, oil. I know that the U.S. has its own reserve. We've said that time and time again. But a lot of businesses are beginning to suffer the impact of some of these tariffs that he's imposing in Mexico, China, and, Canada.
Yes, it is a good question. And moreover, it is a point that's constantly made about Donald Trump that he's actually ruining the American economy with tariffs. This is actually not a full analysis. In the short term, yes. However, in the long run, there are benefits from tariffs. Strictly speaking, according to economics theory, they do not outweigh the losses, but they do exist, and I'll explain. In exactly the same way as I said previously, that some Americans might well take up the jobs the migrants leave, in precisely the same way, and this is what Donald Trump hopes, is that not only will Americans start up businesses to fill the gaps filled by tariffs, but also companies will seek to build plants in USA. And he has already said that he'll give them favorable tax breaks. And as a result, the net employment in America will rise. This is not enough to offset the economic costs according to economic theory, but if the net economic plus of this is jobs rise, in the long run, not only will that guarantee him political survival for a possible third term, but on top of that, that is where his constituency is. It is the American people who feel they've lost out in all this free trade that are backing him. So actually, he is acting not entirely madly from the point of view of economics. This is something that must be underlined. Politically speaking, many people support him. And that a handful of businesses are screaming at present, well, this is a short-term effect. And if it works out that the slack is taken up by American companies or by companies investing in America, then actually long run, he will be hailed for it, whatever disadvantage there may be in terms of costs.
Now, real quickly, let's touch upon Canada. Canada is not giving in to Trump's pressure. Carney, the Prime Minister, demands respect before negotiations, especially the trade war between the both sides, and Trump's approach towards Canada should rather be more of a wooing, approach than a difficult one. Don't you think so? And the issue of, importation, first let me let you answer that, and then we move to importation of illegal substances to America.
Well, actually, the second one, in my opinion, should be answered first because it's just an excuse. He's looking for an excuse. He has to find an excuse in order to act as he does, both politically and I think in some cases legally, because the Constitution demands this. So what we're really looking at is something different. Is Canada going to succeed in its ploy of saying we demand respect and that USA will then sit down with us? Now, the answer to that is, in the short term, I honestly doubt it. The reason is quite simple. We mustn't look at Donald Trump as simply a voice in the wilderness. Many people feel about Canada like President Donald Trump. There was a series, How I Met Your Mother, in which case there was a joke made about that it's like their army, like their currency, and no one takes it seriously. So it's not, I'm only using that as an example, it's not that Donald Trump is alone in his views about America. There are others who support him. So therefore, if the Prime Minister of Canada thinks that President Donald Trump is suddenly going to change overnight, I'm afraid that's most unlikely. More than likely is that President Donald Trump will continue along these lines because, and I point out, his constituents, his political supporters, feel, as far as I can tell, on the whole in the same way, that Donald Trump is here protecting their interests by doing tariffs and by standing up all over around the world and showing that America first. Please remember, that's what he was elected on. He is doing precisely that.
All right, before I let you go, Dr. Marak, the issue of importation of illegal substances from Canada has come up in these conversations. It's obvious the rate of drug abuse has gone up over the years in the U.S. We can then say that the tariff hike is justifiable.
Yeah, it's an excuse. It's just a PR excuse. I think it also needed for legal purposes, something to justify his actions. As for drug abuse, it's been an issue for decades. And quite honestly, I don't see what Canada has got to do with that as a first point of call. I mean, you could argue the importations also come from other countries, notably South America has also played a part, as witnessed many films stated quite openly. So why pick on Canada for this? But and the final point is, when you talk about drugs, there would be no exports of drugs to America if there wasn't a demand. There is a demand that is American, and that is certainly not caused by Canadians.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Marek. That's where we'll leave it for now. Dr. Marek joined us from London.